Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. I want to introduce today's guest. Her name is Roni Lambrecht. So Roni, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Cheryl.
I'm so excited that you're here. It's taken us a long time to get you here.
It has.
Busy women.
That's right.
It's a good thing. It's what we call a champagne problem. It's a good one to have. But with the FemiNinja, what I want to do with my show and what I've been doing is highlighting women who have really gone through life's trials and challenges and able to recover and be resilient and just put the pieces back to their life when everything just falls apart and just explodes on you. And you, of all people, know that experience probably better than anybody else.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give you the floor and have you tell your story.
Okay. On December 29th of 2013, our little family of three suddenly became a family of two. We actually lost our only child, Dalton, in an ATV accident where he was hit head-on by a sandrail. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We got plenty of Kleenex here, and I advise our listeners to do the same. And you were on vacation, and it was the first family vacation that you had in how long?
Quite a while. Long time, yeah.
And it was over Christmas, obviously.
Yeah, it was our Christmas break.
And you were out of state
yes,
when it happened.
We were in California, yes.
And was any other family with you at the time?
No, we had some friends with us. Mm-hmm. Actually neighbors, but very, very close friends with us. But no family at all. Mm-hmm.
And you say that Dalton was killed in an ATV accident.
Yes.
And he was 15 years old.
He was.
But he was an expert rider, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was like another limb to him, like another leg, another arm. He was attached to that bike, and he was amazing, amazing on it.
And you started him at a very young age.
Yes, yes. Yeah, he was 7 weeks old
when
we started teaching him about four-wheelers. So, yeah, he definitely grew up with it, and it really became just a big part of our lives and a big part of his life to ride four-wheelers. So, yes.
And he was, of course, the light of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think when you have an only child, all your energy is really focused on your only child. When you have many children, you kind of have to split up your time and your energy. And but yeah, Dalton, outside of work, Dalton was our primary everything.
Well, and let's talk about work, because you said, when you've got many children, you're dividing your attention between that, and you only had the one child, but you had several businesses that you were working, and you and your husband were really working a lot.
Yes, we've always worked a lot, but usually, at least 80 hours a week. And
wow.
We have 5 businesses that we run and still to this day do. But yeah, so we were very busy all the time. I think we did a pretty good job of finding the balance between that. It took a lot of years, but I think we did a pretty good job of finding our balance. But yeah, we spent a lot of time working and not very much time vacationing. And this was our first really big family vacation in a very long time. That was a pretty big deal, and we were going to be away for almost 2 weeks. And and then just a few days into our trip is when we lost Dalton.
There are no words, and I'm sure that all of our listeners, even if you don't have children, it's like, oh my God, how do you recover from something like that?
Yes, exactly.
And I'm thinking you're probably still wondering that same question.
Absolutely. And I don't think there's ever a full recovery. I definitely don't think that it's something that you get over or that you recover from, I guess. But I do think that you find new ways to move forward and new ways to incorporate what you've learned from this experience into your life. And in our case, to make other people's lives better. That's been a huge jolt in our recovery, in our recovery is the wrong word. In our
Your journey,
in
I
our
guess.
grief journey. Yeah, it's
because
been
it is a
good
journey and
thing.
it's constant.
Yes.
And even I met you, oh my gosh, happy anniversary, Ronnie. Happy friend-iversary. Because we met in February of 2016.
Yes,
we
did.
met because we were both publishing our books at about the same time. And actually became friends with two other brand new authors, first-time authors. And that's when I got to know you and heard your story for the very first time. And what compelled you, because at that point, he had only been gone for 2 years.
He had, yeah.
So what brought you to that point where you had a book that was almost ready to be published? Of course, it has been now. But what was part of that process for you?
You know, in all honesty, I think it was just part of our grief process. I think that John and I, my husband John and I, both try and take whatever we're going through at any given time and try and put a spin on it so that we can learn something from it and as well teach other people something from it. So I feel like if you have to go through a horrible circumstance in your life, be it anything from job loss to death of a loved one to a divorce to whatever you're going through, that somewhere in there is a lesson to be shared and given to yourself as well as to other people. And I think it's our job as human beings to really help anyone that's around us with whatever we've learned.
And I remember you saying that you started out like kind of blogging almost on Facebook. You would just write, and that's when people said, oh, you really should write a blog. And then from the blog is, oh, you really should write a book. And that kind of is a natural transition. But as you were going through even just the Facebook posts and the blog, and before just starting to get the book going, what were you experiencing? Was it helping you in any way, or was it at least just finding a way to express your grief?
Absolutely. Honestly, I think a lot of it started because we were getting so many questions. When you lose a child and when you're honest about it and you're forthright about it on any platform. People will ask questions because they feel compelled to ask questions if you open the door to allow them to do so. And John and I both have been very open in this process. And so people would ask a question, and if I got the same question from multiple people, then I would write about it. And I didn't really ever do it kind of in blog format. It was more like just answering the question on Facebook. Like 3 people asked me this, and so I would answer the question. And it became kind of it became kind of a community of people who were asking questions, and then I would answer their question, and then another community of people would get involved and make comments on how I answered things, and so many of those comments were, oh my gosh, you should write a book on parenting. This is incredible. Or what you said today made me really stop and think about how I am spending time with my kids, or how I am not spending time with my kids, or how I am allowing the chaos of everyday life to take away from my family, or I can't put my phone down. What do you suggest? Or I can't seem to figure out how to make my time work effectively between work and kids, or carpooling and kids, or sports and everything else. So it just almost seemed like here I was giving advice to people that were asking me questions, and I was certainly no expert, but it seemed like the advice that I came up with was helping them. So that's really where the book came from, was people just saying, this is incredible, and your story or what you said made me really stop and pay attention to my family.
Well, it would. I would hope. But even you said like you'd have 3 people ask a question, and if 3 people are contacting you or responding by asking that same question, there's a lot more people out there who have the exact same question.
Exactly, yes.
So a lot of the people who are engaging with you weren't people who experienced the loss of a child.
Oh, nobody had experienced the loss of a child. The questions they were asking were more about like, what do we feel like we did right with Dalton, and what, and do we have any regrets at this point? And, a lot of questions were very specific, like, how do you get up every single day? How do you live every single day? And I remember one point I made to a family who was asking questions, and then other people were chiming in, was what actually allows you to get up tomorrow? What allows you to get out of bed? And one of the things that really, I think, stood out to them, and it really was just something that I kind of off the cuff said, was, I know that I did my best while Dalton was here to know that he knew how much I loved him. And I even have a tattoo right here on my arm that is proof of that. And I think for a lot of parents, if you were to lose a child or lose a loved one that you didn't get to say the right things to, we come up with regrets, and we all have all kinds of regrets that we can come up with, and we create regrets because we feel guilty about something. But that was one of the things that really set me on a good path, was knowing that, first of all, that I taught Dalton to write really well while he was here. But secondly, that he actually put in writing that he knew how much I loved him, and he knew that I was the best mom for him. Aww. And those kind of things, because that is what gets me up, to know that if I were to leave today and Dalton was still here, he knew that I loved him, and I knew that he loved me. And I think as parents, we work so hard at trying to give our kids all the best things, send them to the best school, or, give them the best bedroom and the best place to hang out at, or the nicest cell phone so that we know they're safe all the time, or all those kind of things. When in all reality, all they really need is to know that they're safe, and to know that we love them and we care about them.
And I know you were a fantastic parent, both you and John, and you still are, because you are still parenting him in a lot of ways. That's my personal opinion, just from knowing you so well. And I know that, like I said, you're a wonderful mom, but you were a self-proclaimed terrible parent at the beginning.
Yeah.
So tell us, tell us about that.
Well, like we talked about, I have 5 businesses that I run, and for me, trying to juggle the time between having a family, being a wife, being a mom, and then also being there for my clients and running my businesses, I sadly have to say that I chose my clients over my family a lot of the time. I'm a realtor by trade, and when you deal with clients, with real estate clients, real estate is, sadly, I don't know why it's this way, but it really is. Sadly, it's like people treat it like it's a life or death situation all the time. If I've got buyers and they want to go see a house, they want to see that house now, and they don't want to wait until tomorrow. And so if that happens to be at 8 o'clock at night, or at 7 o'clock in the morning, I've got to be there for my clients. And I didn't know at the time that I could actually set my own hours and create the way that I worked and build my clientele around that. I did not realize that I had the right to choose who my clients were, and to choose the way that I was going to work. I didn't realize that I could say to someone, I'm sorry, I can't show that property to you tonight, but I can show it to you at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I didn't, people tell you that you have the right to do that. You're self-employed and you can make your own decisions. But in the real estate business, we're also pounded with, it's a now or never kind of a thing. And if you don't get up and you do it right now, then someone else is going to take your business away. And what I didn't realize then was, you know what, if a client doesn't think that my family is important enough for me to be home with them for dinner, then they're probably not the client for me. Because I want to be with people who believe that their family and their people that they love, friends and relatives, that they are number one in their life. And so since then, I think it was about the time Dalton was about 7 years old or thereabouts, I finally realized that it's okay to say no, and it's okay to put my family first. But it took a really eye-opening experience for me to do that, wherein Dalton actually walked into my office one day and asked if he could be on my calendar. that day. And for a small child to have to think that he has to be on my calendar to get my attention was pretty disgusting to me. And the fact that it took him saying that to make me notice it was even more disgusting.
Well, that certainly would be like a
slap in the face.
Kind of, yeah. But good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good for him. And from that point forward, I was absolutely, we're going to take this time each day, maybe it's an hour today, maybe it's 4 hours tomorrow. But I was adamant about putting him on my schedule, and making sure that he was my priority, and that work came second. Not that any of my clients have suffered. Let me tell you, my clients are very well taken care of. But suddenly, when I decided to put my family first, I think my clients were actually even taken care of better because I was actually taking time to self-care for myself and my family.
And you were finding balance in your life.
Yes.
And I think that little story just kind of speaks to his natural brilliance.
Yes.
Because you always said that, he's a brilliant boy.
Yes.
And that number one, from the mouths of babes, come the truth.
Yes.
But he knew how to get your attention.
He did.
And he was so bright and so brilliant in so many ways. And you didn't even realize some of the ways that he helped his friends until after he died.
Exactly.
And you heard some of the stories.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to share any of them?
Oh, I could share you a million with you.
Well, we got time.
Yeah. One in particular is absolutely incredible. Actually, after Dalton passed away, we got lots of calls from friends and that kind of thing asking if they could speak at his service. And we had chosen to do a life celebration 2 weeks after he passed away. We had over 500 people there, and the kids got up and spoke, and we just did an open mic. And it was really incredible because these kids lined up and to speak about Dalton. And I remember one of the kids actually called us prior to the service, and his name was Cam, and he said that in 8th grade, 2 years before we lost Dalton, but that in 8th grade, he was in the IEP program at school, and he was considered retarded by the other kids. And he wasn't retarded by any means, but he just communicated a little bit differently. But because of the way kids are, especially in junior high, people were not very nice to him. And he said that he actually had planned on killing himself one afternoon after school. And for some reason that day, he was walking around the lunchroom with his lunch tray trying to figure out where he was going to sit.
Aww.
And Dalton actually got up from his table with his friends and walked over to Cam and said, "Hey, why don't you come sit at our table and I'll introduce you to all my friends."
Aww.
And so Dalton took Cam over to the table, sat him down, and introduced him to a whole round of people. And I think Cam said, I could be wrong, but I think Cam said there were like 12 or 13 other kids sitting around that table. And Dalton introduced him to every single one of them. And later that afternoon, every single one of them was high-fiving him in the hall or saying hello to him in the hall, or, those people were not ignoring him like he wasn't important. And which is really cool that, Dalton took the time to actually do that. But the fact that Cam had said he was going to go home and end his life that afternoon, and the reason that he didn't was because Dalton took the time, and it was just a few minutes of his time to go over, get him, take him back to the table, introduce him, and have lunch together. And that actually changed Cam's course in his life. So from an 8th grader, and we all know in 8th grade how horrible everything is. Junior high sucks.
Nasty.
But to know that Dalton actually took the time to do that is incredible. And it's crazy to think, but so many kids at the service had similar stories. That Dalton stopped and listened to them, and helped them in some way. And in most cases, it was just him listening that helped them change their mind and turn themselves around. And another kid who was actually 2 years older than Dalton actually said that he was sitting by his locker one day, nearly in tears, and Dalton was late for class and stopped and talked to him. And again, another child who was going to go home and end his life that day. And because Dalton sat down with him and missed part of his class and was late, and but actually sat down and took time to talk to him, this kid didn't go home and commit suicide. And now he's doing great in college, and he's moving through life. And so I guess Dalton was here to kind of be an angel for some people, and that was his path.
And I think that's the legacy, his legacy, that you're continuing through your own reaching out. Because when I see you in a room full of people, you really work the crowd, and I'm saying that with all the love in my heart. It's amazing because the way you connect with people and the attention that you give them, it's like they're the only person there in the room, in the world right now. And I've watched you talk to people and have them open up about things that are so deeply personal, and they would say, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. But it's just so beautiful. I know. And there's one incident in particular that I'm thinking of, and this woman just poured her heart out to you and finally says, I don't even know why I said all of that. Nobody else knows any of this. But you could see how the burden was just being lifted from her shoulders when she was sharing what was going on in her personal life. So it's an incredible gift that you have.
Thank you.
And so I don't know if you gave it to Dalton or if he gave it to you, but it's still that bond that you have with him, and I think it's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. You make me cry.
Oh, don't do that, because I'll cry too, and I don't do feelings. I don't do emotions. It's one of those things I just don't do. But anyway, there's another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you said you have no regrets about how you raised him and the time that you spent with him. And your husband did at first. And that was one of the main reasons why you wrote the book.
Yes.
Was to help him and to point out to John how much he did do with Dalton and how much time they did spend together. So did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was saying before, a lot of times when you lose someone you love, we create regrets. We kind of come up with things that I did this wrong or I did that wrong. And even if something wasn't wrong, we come up with them because that's part of your grieving process, is guilt. And anyway, John came up with this goofy thing that he said, and it was, I never played baseball with Dalton. And we have never been a sports family. Never, ever have we been a sports family. We've, been into the ATVs, and we were huge into music. Dalton played guitar and piano, and he was pretty amazing at them. But we never have been into sports. And I remember one day, I don't know, Dalton and I were at Walmart, and he's like, oh, it would be cool if we could play catch one day or something. And I was like, oh, okay, so do you want to buy a ball and a bat and a glove? And he's like, yeah, that might be fun. So I bought a ball and a bat and a glove, and we got him home, and Dalton took him out of the car, and Dalton put him on a shelf, and they sat on a shelf for at least, 8-9 years. They sat on a shelf. And if they sat on a shelf, then that means it wasn't important. That if Dalton wanted to do those things, he would have asked John to do those things with him. And if we weren't doing other things, John would have asked Dalton if he wanted to play those things. But we were never into sports. It just wasn't our gig. And so while I spent all the money on the ball and the bat and the glove, they never played baseball. And John, in the beginning, continued to say, I never played baseball with him. And every dad in America plays baseball with their son. And I was like, but you don't. And not every dad in America teaches his son how to ride a four-wheeler and how to change the oil and how to change the spark plugs and how to change the tires and do all those kind of things. Not every dad teaches his son how to work on an engine. Not every dad teaches his son to do all these things that are outside of baseball. And so you did all these other things, but you didn't do baseball. Big deal.
So John was teaching him all of those skills at a very young age.
Yeah, but he never gave himself credit for those things. He was just talking about the things he didn't do. So it was just kind of dumb. And sadly, you again guilt yourself into things, and that was one of the things that he beat himself up about. And had no right doing so. It's just goofy. It just doesn't make sense.
Your mind does go in some strange places, and it does play tricks on you when you're going through something like that.
Yes.
And the things that the mind comes up with, and you're like, I'm sure, just listening to him, where is this coming from?
Yeah, I was like, are you smoking crack? Dalton didn't want to play baseball. He never wanted to do sports. Like, it just is totally illogical to even think this is an issue. But for some reason he did. And he held on to that for about 2 years or thereabouts after we lost Dalton. That was one of the things that really bothered him. And it doesn't make any sense.
Do you think after you wrote the book and after the book was published that helped to a certain degree? For him?
I think potentially, yeah. I think potentially the book could have helped a little bit. But I think the other side of it was that I just continually reminded him, and I still do to this day, of all the things he did do. Thankfully Dalton had you to teach him to do this. And, thankfully you guys did this together. And, they, like the weekend, 2 weekends before we left for our trip, John taught Dalton how to rebuild the entire inside of the bike.
Oh my God. Wow.
The, carburetor and all kinds of,
all that inside stuff.
All that inside stuff that I know nothing about. But like literally they spent 4 days, 2 weekends in a row rebuilding Dalton's bike so that it would be better and more powerful and all these kind of things. So again, he did wonderful things with Dalton, and there was no reason to have any regrets at all. But again, we all make up little things that we could have done better. And we just have to give ourselves credit for the things that we did do right.
Because you did do a lot of things right.
Thank you.
And another thing is that with your relationship with your husband, because oftentimes when parents lose a child, they grow apart. And oftentimes they even end up getting divorced.
Yeah.
But you and John got even closer.
Absolutely.
And you take really good care of each other, it seems to. I mean, I'm sure there are bad days, I know.
Yeah, there's always those days where you go, did I really marry that? And I know he looks at me and says the same thing sometimes. But yeah, this has definitely brought us a lot closer. I think that we had an instance right after Dalton passed away that made it so. I had a journal, actually, that I wrote to Dalton from the time he was in my tummy, actually. And I wrote in that journal every day. And the first 11 pages of that journal to Dalton are all about how wonderful his dad is and what a wonderful husband he is and how I'm so lucky to have married my best friend and all of those kind of things. And I honestly believe that we somehow had that journal with us when Dalton passed away. I took it on the camping trip and we had it with us. And I think I just thought maybe I would write in it while we were there. I would write more to him. But anyway, we thought that we would give that to him when he was 18 years old. And it was something I had always written in. And that day, the day after we lost Dalton, my parents came and my mom showered us and got us dressed and that kind of a thing, because you don't even know how to do those kind of things when this happens.
You actually lose the ability. You lose the skill.
Totally. Yeah, I didn't know how to brush my teeth. I couldn't brush my hair. I didn't know how to wash my hair. Honest to God, I don't even think we went to the bathroom in that period of time because it took my parents, I think, about 24 hours to find flights and everything and get out there. And we literally couldn't do a thing for ourselves. We hadn't eaten. It was just, we were just lost, completely lost. And when Mom came, she showered us and put us back together and put clothes on us and taught us how to put our underwear on 1 foot at a time. And everything. It was incredible what she did. And then she said, you have to get out of this camper. You have to go for a walk. Get out of this camper, go get some fresh air. And I don't know why, but I picked up Dalton's journal on the way out of the camper that day. And we were out kind of walking around this campground that we were at. And
just the two of you?
Just the two of us, yeah. And we were out walking around this campground, and I sat down on a bench and started reading the journal. And John said, will you read it to me? And I was adamant I wasn't going to read it to him because I wrote that journal for Dalton. It's none of his business. But anyway, he just kept hounding me and hounding me and hounding me. And finally I started reading to him and realizing partway through while I'm reading these first 11 pages, this is all about John and how great of a dad he's going to be and how he's such an awesome husband and all these things. And it was written 15 years or more before. And it was just crazy that I read that to him. And John says to me, I can't believe that you feel that way. And he was just totally baffled. And I was like, how could you believe that? Like, I've written you love letters, I've written you poetry, like all this kind of stuff. And he said, yeah, but I never heard you tell somebody else that before.
Aww.
And it was really incredible. I guess I just didn't realize that maybe I don't say those things out loud to other people like I say them to him to his face. But I think there was a huge turning point right there that in our relationship, that he knew that we were strong and that I really did love him as much as I've always told him, the 20 years previous to that. But it was really eye-opening to me that he was so flabbergasted that
that you really liked him.
that I really liked him, that I really loved him, and that I really felt all those things enough to write to our son about him. And I do think that has a huge impact on the way our marriage has gone since. And we are definitely closer than we ever have been before. And not that we didn't have a great marriage before that, but it's definitely incredible now. Like we definitely fight less. We think about, is this really important to fight about? Those kind of things. But yeah, it's just
you choose your battles.
We choose our battles.
More selective.
Yes, yeah.
And you spend a lot of time together, at least as much as you can, because you both still do work a lot. But before we get into that, I do want to just have you talk a little bit more about the journaling to your child, because you did write the book that is Parenting at Your Best, and it's powerful reflections and straightforward tips for becoming a mindful parent. But even the first time that I read the book, I told you, I said, these are tips that are not just for, parents. And you said, oh no, grandparents, aunts and uncles. And I said, but no, they're tips for every single aspect of life, whether it be business, relationships, even your relationship with finances, your health, wellness, anything. I mean, they're very practical and powerful, mindful tips. And when the book came out, because you are a bit of an overachiever, you had not the one book come out, you actually had 3 books at the very same time.
I did.
Yeah, just to make the rest of us look bad.
But whatever.
Whatever. And one of them is, well, tell us about the other 2.
Okay.
Because they're kind of companion books
to this one. Yes. So the second one is called A Parent's Guide for Journaling to Their Child. Simple Strategies for Writing Heartfelt Love Letters to Your Child. And that one actually came about because we had so many people after Dalton died asking us what could they do for us that would help us in our grief journey. And honestly, I have to tell you, when you've lost a child, there's absolutely nothing anybody can do to help.
Exactly.
It just is, it's impossible. So what John and I were telling people was, you know what, just do us a favor and write love letters to your children and to the other people that you love in your life. And just make sure that they have something tangible to that you can share with them in case something were to happen to you. Make sure that they have something tangible. And so many people came back to us and said, oh, like journaling, I would never have any idea how to write or what to write or what would be important to put in a journal or anything like that. And so what I came up with was this little guide with a ton of questions of things that you can just pick out and journal any day you want. You could flip to a page and you could have, 20, 25 questions in front of you on that page to tell you, give you ideas of what you could write about.
So basically the rules are there are no rules.
Exactly. And what I had done before I wrote this book is I did a bunch of research on journaling to your kids, and there are a ton of books out there on journaling to your kids. But what I have found is that they ask the question and then they give you about half a page to write about the answer to that question. And they're dated. A lot of them are dated. And you know what? What if I don't want to write about that day? What if that's not what's on my heart? Maybe maybe something else is important to me that day. So what I wanted to do was give people the opportunity to have the questions in front of them, and then they could just pick their own journal that they wanted to write in, or a spiral notebook or whatever. And then they could answer those questions for their children and write to them. And then the third book is A Parent's Journal to Their Child, with simple strategies for writing heartfelt love letters to your child. And that one, I actually took the guide, which was the second book, and put it into the actual journal itself, the third book. And I made those pages perforated and just did a really beautiful journal in that people could write whatever they wanted to their kids in that journal. The left-hand side of the page was so that they could put in memorabilia kind of stuff. Like maybe you picked out leaves one day when you were out walking in the park and you want to put those in there. Or you went to a show and you wanted to put the show ticket in there. But then on the right-hand side of the page, you could write whatever you wanted to write to them. And then, and all those strategies are in there for what you could write or anything. And then you could tear those pages out. When you get ready to give it to your child, you could tear those pages out and give the journal to them without all those tips in there. So anyway, and that's where that came from. And it's been really incredible that book has actually taken off as much or more than Parenting at Your Best has, because people have figured out that they love to write to their kids.
And that makes you happy, I can tell just by looking at your face, because you just lit up, and that's wonderful to hear. So how can people find your book?
They can go on my website, which is parentingatyourbestwithoutregrets.com, or they can find it on Amazon.
Okay. And that's all 3 books as well.
Yes.
And because you have nothing else to do in your life, again, 5 businesses, tell us a little bit about your businesses. And I want you to save my personal favorite, and I'm sure your personal favorites, for last, okay?
Okay.
Okay, you know which ones those are, right? Okay, there we go. We're on the right page. Okay, we're the same page.
Yeah. So let's see. The first business would be I prepare loan documents for private investors. And I've done that for 24 years now, I guess. Anyway, so that people can buy houses using a private investor or using their 401k or their IRA to do so, and I prepare those documents for those people. And then my second business is doing closings for title companies. So the title companies hire me to go out and be the notary and go to someone's house or their business or inside the office and close those transactions. I'm also a realtor, and I'm doing this kind of in chronological order, I guess. And then I'm also a realtor, which is something that I actually, when I was in the closings and had, worked with lenders and real estate agents for many, many years, I finally figured out that, wow, I'm doing a lot of babysitting here of agents and of lenders and that kind of a thing. And I think I could probably do a really good job at this job. Because I have so much background on the back end of things, I thought that would make me a better agent to be able to help buyers and sellers. And I think it has. I think that's been awesome. So I do love to do real estate and help my clients find the home of their dreams.
You're so good at it.
Thank you.
You really are. I mean, you just really are looking out for your clients. I mean, really, and you're so honest and open with them. And it's not about the sale. It's about getting the right fit for them.
Absolutely. That's definitely really important to me. I certainly never have gone into anything in my life for the money. And so, it's a lot of people get into real estate because they think money's, the be all end all. And I'm really into it for the people and helping them and making sure that they end up in the right place for their family at the right time. There are certain times in life when it's not a good time to buy or it's not a good time to sell. And while I could make the almighty buck, and helping people buy a house when it's too high to sell to them, or helping people sell a house when it's a buyer's market, I can certainly help with those kind of things, but I sure like to be honest with my clients as to what they're getting themselves into. So, yeah. And then our fourth business is remodeling. So my husband does remodeling, and I do all of his bidding for him, and I do, on his business card, it says I'm his grunt, actually.
Well, better than his grout.
That's right. Because I do his grouting.
I know.
And his caulking and the painting for him. All the things that he really hates to do, bidding. I do those kind of things for him to keep his business going.
And he does amazing work.
Oh my God.
Work.
Yeah, he's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, one of these days I'm going to have him fix up my house. So I promise to schedule him 3 years in advance. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're at about 1 year now.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good.
That's good. But yeah, we always book out about a year ahead of time. So anyway, he's pretty incredible, and so we run that as well. And then my fifth business is now these books. So, and it's called 3 Hearts Press, and I'm 3 hearts are really important to John and I because of the 3 of us, Dalton and John and I. And I've always signed everything with 3 hearts, and didn't even realize that I did that until after Dalton passed away. It's kind of that's a really goofy story in itself. But anyway, so 3 Hearts Press is my book company, and I sell all my books on my website again, and then also on Amazon. So.
And tell us about Do It for Dalton.
Well, we started, after Dalton passed away, we started a Pay It Forward program where we ask people to perform a random act of kindness for someone and then to hand out it's like a little business card and asks that person that when they're able, if they could please pay this, random act of kindness forward. And it's gone all over the United States. It's gone to like 8 other countries. It's really incredible.
Cool.
But people get on our website, doitfordalton.com, and they post things that they've done for people or things that people have done for them.
How sweet.
And a lot of people are really embarrassed to get on there and post, and so we don't have a ton of posts on it. But I do know at Dalton School, actually, 2 years in a row, we did a big Pay It Forward program at his school, and they had made a map of all the places that the cards had gone because people they had an app and all kinds of stuff. And it was really cool to see that, one person's random act of kindness could spread all over the world, and it's pretty cool. So that's really big to us. And our favorite movie is Pay It Forward. And so that's really big to us. And then, and then we wrote the books so that we could really help other parents be better parents and be more mindful and be more present in their lives. So.
And you're also branching out in speaking so people can get a hold of you, and you've been doing some of that and really getting out of your comfort zone too.
Big time.
That's got to be really, hard to talk about.
It is. It's very hard to talk about, and I always end up in tears at some point.
Well, I'm sure the audience does too.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I've been asked to speak at several different places and have ended up doing so, and it really feels like, even one person comes up and tells you at the end that it made a difference in their life. It's pretty incredible that our story could have an effect on someone. So, so while I'm really not comfortable speaking,
you're really good at it,
and I get really nervous about it, I do love to share our story and to hopefully help other families be better.
And one last thing I want to ask you, because this is one of my pet peeves for different reasons. But you always, when you see people in a restaurant, when you see a family, because I was at this lovely little Italian bistro with Mike about a week and a half ago. And we're sitting like in the bar area, of course, looking over the divider. And there's this little family. There were like 2 young moms with their little kids, probably, 2 years old. And they were absolutely adorable. And all of a sudden I saw one of the moms hand over like a toy. It was either a cell phone or iPad or something like that, but it was like a 2-year-old version of it, but that's what it was. So the moms continued their wine and conversation, and there were the kids with their faces in their devices at 2 years old. And I just looked at Mike and I said, "Oh, Ronnie wouldn't like that." I said, "I don't like it either," but she'd go over and she would talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I have this story, and sadly this happens all the time, but I went to our favorite wing place one night to pick up wings, and the wings weren't ready for me to get and bring home, so I stood and I waited, and there was a family there who, mom, dad, and 2 kids, and they were sitting there, and every single one of them, all 4 of them, were on their phones and not communicating, and I lost it. I just, I lost my mind. I cried and cried and cried and cried. And I'm sure all these people are sitting in the restaurant looking at this crazy lady standing in the corner crying, like, what in the world? But I was just so devastated that someone would give up that time with their family. And I know every now and then we just need some time to ourselves or whatever, but dinner's not the place to do it. I just really think that when you're sitting at dinner, that should be really focused time with your family, with your loved one, with whoever you're with. Shoot, if you're doing a one-to-one with a business associate, put your freaking phone away and be there and be present. It just, that night, it just killed me. I cannot even explain to you how sad it made me that this poor family had sat there. It was 20 minutes before my meal was ready. And they sat there for 20 minutes and they never once spoke to each other. And they ate their meals. So they had their fingers on their phones with one hand and they ate their meals with the other hand. And they never once spoke. And it was just so terrible to me. It was just, it was so hurtful. So anyway, what I did was I bought them a dessert and I got out of 2 of Dalton's Pay It Forward cards. And I wrote them a little note and just said, please, if you would, please put all your electronics away, put your phones away, and enjoy this dessert on me, and talk to each other. be together. I would do anything in the world to have 5 minutes to have dessert with my son, and please don't let this go to waste. Anyway, and sadly enough, we do that nearly every time we go out to dinner. We find a family that is doing the same thing. In fact, when we were on a vacation once in Mexico after Dalton died, it was actually the 2nd anniversary of his death. We had decided we had to run out and get out of the country and just get out of here and escape. And we were in Mexico at a restaurant, and a family was doing the same thing. God. And it took John literally grabbing my shirt and holding me back to not go wring their necks, because I was so upset that how could you even be on vacation and have your freaking phones out? It was just so sad. So that's one thing I would tell you is please put your phones away, put your electronics down, and just pay attention to each other. Give each other the respect and the courtesy to be together when you are together. Just do it. Please do it.
Anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Oh, I don't think so. This has been a lot.
It has been a lot, and but it's wonderful to hear. I mean, it's such a sad story, but these are messages that really need to get out, and you're doing such an incredible job. You're so courageous and so brave, and you do it with so much grace and dignity. I know there are days when you think you don't.
Yes.
And I'm sure that happens a lot, but I thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for the message that you're sending. And I know Dalton's so proud of you.
Thank you.
I don't do emotions.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Oh, well, it's always an honor to have you in my presence. I tell you, you're one of my favorite people in the world. And if you move to Nashville and want to come with you have to have a spare bedroom for me.
Absolutely.
All right, enough of that. So everybody, pay attention to your children. Take the time to journal to them. Put down the cell phone. Appreciate every single day, because that's what Dalton would want you to do. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.